Over the years, aviation movies have enchanted audiences around the world with the romance of flying, and a succession of Hollywood leading men have portrayed pilots as men with special qualities that today have become known as the right stuff. On the ground, pilots have invariably been portrayed as swashbuckling rogues, two-fisted drinkers with a lady on either arm, while up in the air, they're usually cocky daredevils with nerves of steel, ice water in their veins, and guts only matched by a heart that knows no fear. Good evening, I'm David Foster. Like most of us, I've always wondered whether the real-life pilots were anything like the aviators that we see in Hollywood movies. Tonight, I hope that you'll join me as I fly with one of the world's best aerobatic flying teams, the Snowbirds of Canada. For the past 15 years, the Snowbirds have thrilled millions of fans like myself at air shows around North America with their dazzling display of aerobatic flying. Now, while the Snowbirds don't like comparisons to any other national flying teams, there is no doubt that the 9 pilots of the Canadian Armed Forces team are incredible flyers who, at speeds ranging up to 450 miles per hour, perform spectacular feats that are truly breathtaking. Especially when you realize that the wings of their jets are often overlapping by as much as 6 feet. The Snowbirds fly close and fast, and I've always thought that if any pilots had the real stuff, it would be these Canadian daredevils.
You know, as I look back, I think I've always had this great desire to fly. I remember my first flight when I was 5 years old. It was in a small single-engine Cessna, and ever since that, I've been hooked on flying.
When I was 18, I realized my boyhood dream and got my pilot's license. Since then, I cannot begin to describe the joy and pleasure that hundreds of hours up in the air have brought me. Flying and music are lifelong passions of mine, and they've always been inextricably linked. In fact, for a number of years, I used to compose songs while staring at a poster of a 747 control panel for inspiration. And even today, whenever I'm flying my plane, there's always some sort of music going on in my head.
And music together in one great song. So consequently, when the Snowbirds asked me to write a piece of music for them to perform to, the prospect seemed irresistible. For years, I'd fantasized about flying with these guys, and when I learned that they would be rehearsing here in Comox, British Columbia, which is just miles from where I grew up on Vancouver Island, I could hardly wait.
Hi, sir. How are you? Of course, the one you guys are all on.
Guys, how are things going?
Shortly after landing, I met a legendary Snowbird figure, Colonel George Miller.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
Like to meet our boss, George Miller, David Foster.
Hi, George.
I've heard a lot
Nice to
about
meet
you,
you.
David.
Years ago, when he was one of the team's early leaders, Colonel Miller devised many of the amazing maneuvers the Snowbirds still perform. And today, he's commander of the Canadian Armed Forces base at Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, where the Snowbirds are headquartered. I would have liked to have had him describe his experiences, but in true military fashion, Colonel Miller preferred to talk about the present Snowbird leader. 12 years ago, he told me, when Major D.F. Hugebear was the lead solo of a Snowbird team, his teammates called their star pilot Yogi, a nickname that stuck after he left the Snowbirds and resumed a distinguished flying career as an ace fighter pilot.
You get onto some runways, you get onto tight runways.
2 years ago, Yogi realized a lifelong dream when he was selected to return to the Snowbirds as their team lead, and today the respect and affection he commands is captured in his new nickname. Yogi is still Yogi, a fire hydrant of a man with a big heart and even bigger sense of humor. But to the men he commands, Yogi has become the boss.
I think one has to have, as a lead, a lot of confidence. He has to be able to take and accept the responsibility of a lot of airplanes.
Stand by, check in. Snowbirds, check in. Snowbird 2, 3, 4, 5. Lead, have a good call on practice.
The lead has to be that type of individual who can take continual pressure and still be able to exude an image of relaxation about it, so that the team is relaxed and up for its performances and not tense about it.
When you get into flying like this, we talk about contracts an awful lot. What it is sheer honesty and your ability to maneuver your airplane to exactly where you want it and not go into somebody else's airspace. To give you an example, on a rejoin, we'll use the example of the two left wingers that are joining on me from the left wing. Well, one's contract is not to go below my wing level, and that means he's got all of the airspace to my left and high. He will not ever, ever go below my wing line, because the other fellow joining on that wing, his contract is not to go above it. And so his airspace for safety is below my wing line and out to the left, and that's all of his airspace. Now, it's very easy to say, oh yeah, that's a contract. Well, what happens if you go through it? Well, you don't. That is a hard and firm contract. You can't violate that contract. My contract is I won't hit the ground, or I won't cause anybody else to hit the ground. And that's basically the big contract that I have.
You have to trust them with your life. Just for instance, you may be at the top of a maneuver, upside down, and you can't allow yourself to be spooked by the ground. And there's where the trust is. I can't just all of a sudden break off and say, gee, I think we're too low, and break off. Then I'm going to throw everyone out on my side of the formation. You just learn to trust his leading. You know that time after time again, he never lets you down. He never will. I trust him with my life. I have to. He's the most professional pilot I think I've met in my career.
If a bird hit my windshield and come crashing through and took my head off and my airplane hit the ground, yes, you'd have all of them hit the ground, because they're looking only at my airplane or flying through the inner wingers onto me or some portion of my airplane. And again, their contract as formation pilots is 99.9% concentration is unacceptable. It has to be 100% in the formation. So something happened to me, yeah, probably be more than me would go in.
Since 1931, when a group of crazy Canadians tied biplanes together with ropes to form the first aerobatic team, the Siskins, aerobatic teams have surprisingly compiled a safety record that is better than any other form of flying. But when the rare tragedies have occurred, they have most often resulted when leaders like Yogi have made a mistake. Several years ago, an entire Dutch flying team was wiped out when they followed their leader into a Swiss mountainside. And in 1979, the leader of the American military team, the Thunderbirds, miscalculated during a routine maneuver and crashed into the Nevada desert, killing himself and 3 other teammates who followed him into the ground.
I don't think it ever enters my mind. If anything like that bothered me, I wouldn't be able to fly. That's probably the furthest thing from my mind, or I don't even think I ever think about it. If I had anything like that that bothered me, I just wouldn't be able to do the job. So no, it doesn't. I don't even think about it.
He has to have, I believe, the ability to not only demonstrate through his particular ability in controlling the team in the air, but on the ground, be able to interact and socialize along with the other members of the team in a manner that is not going to draw any disrespect for his position from the other team members, but to keep it together as a very closely knit organization.
even though I three-putted the green...
Could you bring my ball for me?
File that under R for routine.
The Snowbirds, as I was quickly discovering, are not exactly your routine guys, and the pilot who flies right next to the boss proved to be no exception. On the front lawn of Captain Joe Parente's single-story home, the Flamingos are set out in his favorite snowbird formation, the Big Goose. At 25, Joe is the youngest snowbird, a real feat considering he only learned to fly 3 years ago. Today, Joe is enjoying the perks of reaching the pinnacle of his aviation world. His smooth flying, both in the air and on the ground, has already earned the Vancouver Bachelor the nickname of Juan Valdez. And in fact, as he faces another snowbird practice, pilot Joe Parente has only one fear to deal with.
I'm scared of heights. I can't go to a balcony and look over the side of a balcony. I'll get dizzy. I can't do that. I can be in an airplane upside down. It won't bother me because I'm strapped in, I think is what it is. But to look over a balcony, it'll actually make my head spin. Is there such a thing as the right stuff? I don't think so. I think it's, you try, you give your best. It's 5% ability and 95% determination. You have to want it. And if you want it, you'll achieve it, no matter what it is. I fly an inner slot, and I fly the inner right wing. Directly behind me, he's probably about 6 feet below my tail, and on either side, we're looking at probably 4 feet of overlap. Overlap means directly behind each other, like this, and then there would be 4 feet of overlap this way with our wings. That's how I'm sitting on the boss's aircraft, 4 to 6 feet inside of his wingtip, and so will somebody on mine. I'm allowed about 6 inches to a foot high, and probably 6 inches to a foot low, and about a foot laterally, and that's my contract. That's what we call an error box. That's where I'm allowed to make my errors inside of that box. I'm allowed to shift around in that box. I'm not allowed to move outside of it. It's probably the most exciting thing I've ever done, and probably ever will do. It's the best job. I know right now it's the best job I'll ever have. You enjoy the celebrity status of probably some performers. You enjoy the rush of maybe Olympic athletes and in what they do and what they're able to perform. So for 2 years, you're a hero, and I think that's where the advantage is we know that it's 2 years long, and then it's over. Whereas other people may sit there and say, well, maybe I'll make a comeback 1 year. I know that in 2 years, I'm finished, and I'll be glad when it's over, but I'm having the time of my life right now that I'm doing it.
It's usually safe for a pilot, and sometimes it's even funny for an audience. In the real world, however, an accident is no laughing matter. I know. 2 years ago, I was in a twin-engine plane that had a fuel cell explosion just seconds after takeoff. Fortunately, we were able to land before the plane was totally destroyed.
I'll never forget that brush with death, and like most of us, I wondered how the Snowbirds dealt with that prospect on a daily basis.
I've had a few close calls. I think all the men on the team have. Things that, I guess you skip a heartbeat, have a gray hair or two grow out of this situation.
Perhaps the closest call I may have had was I had a windshield that started to disintegrate on me. I brought the airplane back before it actually did let go. It was kind of worrisome at the time, but it was all safe and sound.
Well, how did you feel after?
I think just thought of it's another day of flying, actually.
It is stressful. Stressful in that obviously you're very close to each other, and a 1 second distraction could cause an accident to take place. You can never relax or say, well, I've seen it all, I've done it all, because if you have a cavalier attitude towards flying, this is probably when something will grab you, catch you, and deal you out, basically.
After doing the same show for 2 years, you might be lulled into a false sense of security, thinking that there's virtually nothing you can't do, or there's no way you can get into trouble. And that's exactly what you don't need when you're flying as close as we do. It doesn't hurt to get scared, and I normally get scared about once a week, and that keeps you honest. You know, it stops you from being from your head swelling or being complacent.
I never, honestly, I never think about it while I'm in the air. I'm too busy trying to do my job. In on-the-ground time, sometimes you consider it. I'd say as you get older, you consider it more. But the benefits that I get from flying far outweigh any of the possible risk factors.
Whoa, man. I saw a burning body fall from 40,000 feet. He kicked, he screamed, he clawed the air. My God, it was so neat. The chute wrapped round his body and the shroud wrapped round his feet, and he'll never fly home again. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die.
Well, the black humor involved with pilots goes back to the question of how do you handle emotional, stressful conditions, i.e. if somebody gets killed or this happens or that happens. That's one way of handling it, and that is black comedy. It's a way to handle things, get it out of your system, maintain an air of it didn't bother me, and carry on to the next.
Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He'll never fly home again. $100,000 going home to his wife. $100,000 in exchange for his life. A lot more goddamn money, but a lot less family strife, and he'll never fly home again. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die, and he'll never fly home again. Yeah, right. Can't win it. I've always wanted to say that.
Despite their relaxed demeanor on the ground and their attitudes, which seem so casual, when they climb inside an aircraft, it's deadly serious. It's a very, very unforgiving business.
I always have butterflies in my stomach before, like walking out of the airplane and before getting into the airplane. Once you start up, and once you get going, I feel good then, because then we're taxiing out, I'm in the aircraft, I'm in the cockpit, I'm in my office, ready to go somewhere, ready to do something.
Okay, harness it, lock, outer suit connected, pins out, QRB, lock, chin strap, good, hydraulics, good, trimmer for suction, takeoff. Temps and pressures are good, fuel is good, flaps are selected and showing takeoff, gyros are good, such as...
I don't really think about the show that I'm going to do. I may think of various things right from my wife to just different situations that went on maybe the night before. I would have to say when the brakes are on and the power comes up on the end of the runway, that's when I stop my little daydreaming and get down to what's happening and what's going to happen for the next 25 minutes.
Snowbirds rolling now.
Being in the hockey game, once you take that first hit, any nervousness is gone. You're in the game now, and you just don't have time to worry about it. You're flying.
The Snowbirds, I realized, have to be perfectionists, especially if you're the two solo pilots who hurl their planes at each other in a series of near misses.
There's the split.
Okay.
And,
See that little pull-up that gets me up there?
Exactly.
These two guys are a real study in contrasts. Don Broder is a fun-loving giant of a man who towers over his lead solo, Mike Skibitsky, a serious student of flying who loves the intricacies and details of his job. Once I got talking to the solos, I realized that their differences were not just physical.
Hello, Mamo? Okay, вже знов до вас говорю.
His ancestors came from the soil of the Ukraine, where flying was reserved for the birds. The only son of immigrant parents growing up in Toronto, Mike Skibitsky had his feet firmly planted on the ground. But at 13, Mike joined the Air Cadets and soon discovered he could get ahead in the air. By 16, he was a champion glider pilot.
Next to sex, it's the best thing. The fact that you've, quote, slipped the surly bonds of earth. You're doing something very, very different. And it's exciting. It takes skill that's acquired over a number of years. And the fact that they pay me for it is just icing on the cake.
If anybody seemed destined from birth to become an ace fighter pilot, a real-life Top Gun, and a Snowbird solo, it would have to be Don Broder. After all, Don's grandfather was the legendary Roy Brown, who earned a place in the history books as the man who shot down the Red Baron. But though Don grew up in the Air Force as the son of another distinguished pilot, it was not until his older sister married an American Air Force pilot that Don began to feel his flying genes. His brother-in-law would subsequently die in a crash, but that tragedy only reinforced Don's determination to someday become a Top Gun himself.
If there were never, ever accidents and never any fatalities, the type of people who fly fighters and fly jets would not be the same type of people that they are today. As to the explanation of why an accident would cause me to go and make a decision like that, you'll have to find Sigmund to answer that question.
Even psychiatrists like Sigmund Freud might have difficulty understanding why grown men want to play chicken, but that's seemingly what a Snowbird solo performance amounts to.
Let's compare it to two cars coming down a wide open area, a road with no lines on it. You've just got to line yourself up with that guy. He's going 60 miles an hour, you're going 60 miles an hour, you're head on. 60 miles an hour is about 88 feet per second. So with no lines, run at the guy and get yourself to go, let's say, 3 feet by his door. Do the same thing, add in the up-down, and instead of 88 feet per second, each of you is going 450 feet per second, so about 900 to 1,000 feet per second closing.
If I do make an error, it could be critical. And I know where the seriousness is, at that point. And I try not to make those particular mistakes. It's never out of my mind. It's in the back of my mind. It's got nothing to do with the fact that I've got a lot of life insurance on me, but...
You can make lots of errors, and every show is a myriad of errors, but you can't afford mistakes. So if you set up in the wrong place, you better realize it at least 2,000 feet back. That gives you a second to react, a second to make the correction.
What we do when we turn into show line, we look at each other. I will call smoke on, which is, of course, the smoke that we trail. And then when I see him, I will call contact, which means I can physically see him. And he responds only when he sees me with another contact call. After that, I don't look at him. I've got my job to do. He has his job to do. His job is to miss me, which is why I have that faith in him. I don't look at him anymore. I know he's not going to hit me. If he did, he'd be fired. And in fact, he told me one day, he said, "You won't have to fire me. I'd quit."
At night, snowbirds like Don and Mike let off steam by playing a game whose chief object is to hit another ball with yours. The game is an old Air Force one called crud. The rules are as complicated as snowbird maneuvers, but what I discovered it really amounts to is a boisterous workout that requires the superb hand-eye coordination of an aerobatic pilot. I'll be back with the guys with the real stuff after this break. To be a snowbird, it seems like your hands have to be reflex extensions of your eyes, and probably nobody requires that natural gift more than Captain Jim Follow. Jim's teammates sometimes call him Noof, but when you fly right in the middle of a tight snowbird formation, it's no joke being surrounded by other planes just inches away. In those situations, Jim's hands have to be as steady as the rock of his native Newfoundland.
In the snowbirds, obviously you've got to be capable of flying your aircraft properly and accurately and very well. But on the other hand, you can't be an individual if you're stuck in the middle of a 9-plane formation.
The right stuff is not really a term that I like to use, but I would say more professionalism and in our specific job, teamwork as well.
Back up, Jimbo!
Snowbird pilots have to be team players, but what struck me when I met them was how widely different their backgrounds and personalities were. They're really a bunch of independent characters who love the individualism of nicknames like Yogi and Scooby, Schmanky, and Bullethead. While the Snowbirds are obviously united by a love for flying, when you talk to a pilot called Hillbilly, you just know that Captain Steve Hill is not your average follow-the-leader jet jockey. They've been calling him Hillbilly ever since he was a Toronto teenager addicted to motorcycle racing. But as thrilling as they were, the machine Steve Hill loved only provided him with a 2-dimensional ride. So, after studying aircraft mechanics at college, Hillbilly joined the military, and he put up with the discipline and the haircuts simply so he could fly in a 3-dimensional fast lane.
I've wanted to do it for a long time, and to finally get the chance to do it, it's like sort of a thrill of a lifetime every day you get in the airplane.
For that brief period of time while you're in control of the airplane and airborne, it's very hard to distinguish between yourself and the machine. You seem to be operating like one thing going through the air. It's almost like the airplane isn't there, that it's you that are there, and you're just doing whatever it takes to keep yourself there, and you don't really think of it as flying. And it's a really neat feeling when you get to that point.
The real truth of the matter is, these are the guys that make it all happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, enough. Brian? Without a great ground crew, nothing will fly. Right, guys? That's right. Compared to other aerobatic teams, such as the American Blue Angels, who have more than 100 men to maintain their planes, the Snowbirds have a ground crew of only 10 to keep trainer jets built in the 1960s up in the air. Nevertheless, the Snowbirds have never missed any one of their 70 scheduled appearances annually at air shows scattered around the North American continent. It is a nearly miraculous maintenance record, and one that crew chief Alex Pouzan is justifiably proud of.
Our crew is very well qualified. We're compact. We do a lot of things that the other teams have a lot of other people do. We handle it ourselves. So we're small, but I think we're very good.
Each member of the Snowbird ground crew is responsible for one plane and one pilot with whom he flies from show to show. Unlike other parts of the military where fraternization between officers and enlisted men is discouraged, a close bond develops between Snowbird pilots and technicians. A bond so tight, I learned, that it's referred to as a marriage. Consequently, whether it's an engine overhaul that's required in the middle of the night or a last-minute adjustment on the tarmac, there is always one factor that is paramount in all of their minds.
You know, it's the pilot's life basically in our hands. So, yeah, there's a fair amount of worry. We make sure that they're all serviceable and don't want anything to happen. Every time you see the show, you know, you can see it 1,000 times, and still, you always get this sort of sense of pride and shivers up your spine sort of thing.
In the cockpit, there is no room for emotions. But for the wives of Snowbird pilots, watching their husbands up in the air is an emotional experience as varied as the men they love.
The first time I ever seen him fly in a Snowbird formation, I had tears in my eyes. It's a goal he's wanted for a long time. I'm glad for him. I also wonder sometimes, what is it, what's up there, what keeps him there? Keeps him this far away, you know? But most of the time when I think of him at work, I think of him with his feet up on his desk, and it's hard to visualize that that's actually him in the sky.
Well, I have to admit, he's the only one I watch. I don't really watch the other planes. My eyes are on him. I feel really proud.
I have great confidence in him. He's been flying for so long that, you know, I'm very confident. He goes off, and I don't worry at all.
I worry a lot. I'm more calm now that it's the second year, and I'm thinking, okay, we've only got a few more shows, we're going to be done. But yeah, there's a little bit of fear. You have to when you see all those airplanes so close together.
Lots of times you don't really think that it's somebody you know up there. You know all the guys personally, but it's just planes up there. You don't really think that it's them because they're just normal people. Normal husbands and fathers and whatnot.
I have an airplane one.
The minute he leaves the house in the morning, it's like anybody else going to work. He goes to work, he comes back at night, sort of thing. I worry about him more around the house. I think if he got up on a stepladder, I'd be terrified, you know, that he would fall off the stepladder more than flying a few $1 million worth of aircraft around.
I can't let myself worry about him, otherwise I'd be a nervous wreck, and it wouldn't be fair to baby Gino or my husband.
Jamie just wouldn't want him to be a pilot. I don't know why. I think she probably wants him to be a doctor. She worries a whole lot. She always figures something's going to go wrong with the airplane. And that's her baby, so she doesn't want her baby to have to go through the same thing, because she'll have to go through the same thing all over again. But he's a lot smarter than I am, so he probably won't be.
Est-ce que t'as mangé ce matin? Est-ce que tu viens regarder nous aussi?
I don't know so much as I'd like to be up there, but I'd like to achieve what I think that Steve has achieved. I think he feeds on flying with every part of his soul. That's just something that he's grasped for and finally got, and I think that everybody in their own way is looking for that ultimate feeling, and I think Steve has got that, and I envy him that.
Flying has always given Steve Curtin a special feeling, and in fact, he still likes to fly the radio-controlled model planes he started on as a kid. Since then, the Hamilton native has literally flown everything and anything from a single-engine Cessna to a jet fighter. But there is, surprisingly, one form of flying that has prepared him best for his position as a Snowbird inner winger.
Flying a helicopter for 5 years, I've kind of gone into the smoothness of flying. I don't like yanking and banking the airplane around.
For my job would be to maintain a very smooth platform for the other guy to fly off of. It's sort of been described as if you have a game crack the whip or something. If lead hits a bump, I hit a bump. By the time that translates to my wingman, he's gone. So I have to try and be as smooth as I can to give him a really good ride.
From the ground, a Snowbird performance looks so effortless, so easy. But up in the air, the pilots are really working. Not only are they manhandling an 8,000-pound aircraft, but they are often fighting the G's, which is pilot shorthand for gravitational forces. Positive G's increase the weight of an arm or a leg by as much as 7 times its normal weight, while negative G's cause blood to rush into the head, blurring the vision so that everything becomes a pink haze. Gravitational forces can even cause a pilot to black out, and to combat that grim possibility, snowbird pilots are constantly performing a series of what amounts to isometric exercises to keep the painful and dangerous effects of the G's within safe limits.
Rolling up. It's really busy up there. There's a lot of things happening.
Rolling.
Your eyes are constantly changing, looking at different things. Your mind is thinking about what's coming up next. You're listening, what's happening on the radios, and you're coordinating it all with your feet and your hands.
A snowbird performance only lasts for 25 minutes. But given the stress and strain, both physical and mental, it's hardly surprising the pilots are always happy to head for home.
Somebody did a study on us one time a few years ago, and they figured that the energy expended in a snowbird performance equated to an 8-hour day at hard labor. So when we do 2 shows a day, it's no wonder the individuals are tired.
If everybody has a good show on the way taxiing back in, there'll be nothing but chatter on our frequency. There'll be jokes flying, people laughing, kibitzing back and forth.
If the show has gone badly, you're trying to put it out of your mind so that you can think of the things to correct for the next show.
You always want to be a little better every trip that you do, because you always learn something new every time. And the fun that I get is my own reward, I guess, at the end of the trip, knowing that I've done my job, right or wrong.
I find myself quite pumped up still after the show. It takes me a long time to sort of come down after doing it. You know, the adrenaline's just flowing like crazy. And you've got that stuff going through your body, and all of a sudden you're stopped. And it does take a while to come down off it. It's sort of like a high. You feel good. Give yourself about 2 or 3 hours, and then you're really tired. You're just out of it. You know, all you want to do is just sort of sit down and relax a bit.
Yeah. It's a very tight-knit, close group. Although it may not seem like it at times, but I think we all become very, very close friends.
Got a tail?
I'm going to do this a little bit.
He's a nice fish. He's a nice fish. You got tin foil laid up for it?
Yeah, this is...
Okay, lay it on there, and I'll hold this up for you, and you can stuff that puppy.
Yeah.
Fish. Puppy fish. Is that a dogfish?
Now, get a close-up of this guy.
He's had an operation. He's not going to have sex no more.
Seriously. Now, I don't want any of you kids to try this at home. This is done by seasoned professionals. What you do is you take 1/2 cup of parsley and mix it with 1/2 cup of butter. Once you've done that, you take, this is very simple to do. You just take the potato, stick it in the center, use about a 6-inch by 2-inch square of foil, and just wrap it up like so.
I can only do 2. Yeah. I can only do 2. Okay, listen, I can help you out here. Look, there you go, there's 3. I can only do 2.
The real stuff will return after a break, and I'll finally get a chance to fly with these guys. It's always a matter of heated debate whether pilots are born or made, whether the real stuff is acquired skill or natural talent. Howard Tarbut, or Zowie as he's called, is one snowbird pilot who believes, as I do, that he was born to fly.
I think it goes right back to first time I thought of what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to fly. It's all I've ever wanted to do. I've always seemed to have a natural aptitude for flying. To me, I don't find it difficult to be able to fly, or to fly well, in fact.
Hollywood's version of the pilot as somebody with a mystique of ingredients known only as the right stuff was beginning to pan out. But when I asked Gino Tessier, the Snowbird pilot that I was going to fly with, he thought it was nonsense.
I'm not a great pilot. I can fly an airplane good enough, I think, to do what I'm doing. But the greats are somebody else. It's not me. I'll never be me.
Nothing in Gino Tessier's background in any way prepared him for life as an aerobatic jet pilot. When his aspiring professional hockey career ended in his small Quebec town outside Montreal, Gino got to ride in an airplane for the first time in his life while being flown to British Columbia for basic training. Gino was 19 and he was hooked. Within 7 years, Gino graduated from piloting a single-engine Cessna to instructing other students on a Tudor jet. But it was not until he was assigned to a search and rescue posting that Gino finally found the form of flying that he loves the best.
Helicopter is like being a bird. You can go anywhere you feel like going. You can go anywhere. Like there's no limit. The sky's the limit, basically. Like you want to land on that mountain, you want to land beside that rock, you want to go. You can do anything with a helicopter. So to me, that's the ultimate, in that you are really, really on your own. As long as you have fuel, you're laughing. If you like what you're doing, then you keep on pushing to be a little better, I guess, and to do a little better. So what can I say? You know, I'm very happy and lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and it couldn't have happened to a better person. Just kidding.
Okay. Okay, now we just want to go over a couple of things here. Ejection procedure, it is an ejection seat, okay?
I had been told a couple of fighter pilots, after leaving the military, had established new careers as stand-up comedians. And when Captain Bob Curran briefed me on the ejection procedures to follow on my flight ahead, I began to fully understand that the black humor of a pilot is awfully good training for getting people to laugh in a nightclub.
Okay, so what'll happen is I'll say prepare to eject, okay? And when I want you to eject, I'll say eject, eject, eject. You eject on the third eject.
Gotcha.
If you don't eject on the third eject, there'll be a little flame go out on your left side. That'll be me. Okay, if you go in on the land, everything's the same, except you don't have to get out of your parachute right away because you'll be on land. If you're going into trees, cross your legs.
Really?
Yeah. Trees have sharp points on the top. Okay. That's pretty well it.
Okay, I'm not going.
Okay. Cut.
go. Well done.
Thanks.
So you figure you can hack this job?
God, no. No way. I'll leave it to you guys. We're in the studio tonight. They're singing. Well, I just had a great time. I mean, I'll be talking about it for a long time to come.
How did the landing get you a little bit?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, it was, I mean, it wasn't, Gino, you know, Gino was great because he really described everything as we were doing it and let me know. Because I couldn't, you know, this is not unlike a Lear, right, in wing, right? Same wing size as a...
It's a little different, like,
yeah.
Ours is not swept at all, like, yes, it
Right.
is swept a bit.
And they got just that little lever, right, that manual kind
Well,
of
it's
lever.
business jet wear.
But I mean, you know, when you're like, you know...
Like, didn't you notice nobody served coffee on board at all?
I got some. Where were you?
I was going to tell you, but I forgot altogether. We had no...
He drank his coffee one this morning again.
Yeah. That's right.
Right.
But you didn't barf. You did all right.
Yeah, no, I felt a little funny there for about a minute, but...
That's because I had my hand on your legs.
Well, yeah. At the end of the week I had spent with the Snowbirds, I realized that the truth about pilots is far more interesting and even more inspiring than what Hollywood would have us think. The Snowbirds, it turned out, weren't the Supermen of movies, but instead they were ordinary guys who, through a combination of hard work, skill, intestinal fortitude, and grace under pressure, are able to do extraordinary feats extraordinarily well. And that, it seems to me, is what the real stuff is all about. The capacity of ordinary people to do the extraordinary.
There you go.
Forward split now.